So that note aside, let me begin to lecture on the material. This is chapter 3 of the Nature of Order, book 4, the existence of an I, which to somebody who doesn't know the nature of order is totally a strange mystical title, but there is logic behind it. Christopher begins by pointing out how we feel related to the world. We are connected to it if we allow ourselves to be. So, and we connect to different parts and pieces to different degrees. So it is this intensity. It is not that it's either or. It is that we connect to different parts. And so the mystery is why we connect to some pieces and some parts more strongly than to other parts. Well, the answer is given in the 2,000 pages of the nature of order, is that where we connect to more strongly is those objects and environments that possess life. And life, again, is defined independently by the techniques proposed by Christopher, namely the presence of the 15 fundamental properties, which are geometrical, a very high concentration of the field of centers, which is again geometrical, a measure. And for listeners who don't know what the field of centers is, it is a measure of organized complexity or deep symmetry, where you have overlapping, reinforcing symmetries. Again, geometrical notions. Um, if someone wishes to criticize this train of thought, let me point out that the neurodesign knows that more than 50% of the brain is involved with visual responses. So it makes sense to concentrate on the visual responses, even though, of course, we do not rule out the other senses in creating an environment that we respond to. Christopher then points out that this deep process of connection is not new; it is just forgotten. Because earlier cultures that had a constant exposure to the natural environment felt this connection, the connection that Christopher is talking about. They felt it as a matter of fact. It does not seem strange as it does to us. What has happened is that for several centuries, industrialized societies, we are surrounded by artificial objects that are largely devoid of geometrical life, as is defined in the nature of order. Therefore, we do not feel any strong connection. And as often happens with the human body or with any animal, really, if you live in a particular environment and you don't have this stimulation, then you become numb. And you forget about what it feels like to connect in a deep, visceral manner that we are discussing today. So the relatedness to objects in the built environment attaches us to the physical world. Um, One superficial explanation has to do with brain circuits and cognitive recognition. Nevertheless, Christopher argues very strongly that the effect is deeper than this, that the effect is really more on the order of physics rather than uh, chance evolution of neural circuits inside the brain of the individual. So this is what he's trying to across, and he's struggling to get it across because we hardly have the language to describe this sense of connection, even though those who are open to it and the pre-industrial societies that for them this was natural. Uh, this is a deeply felt experience once it is established. Therefore, we share a fundamental quality, which Christopher is going to name the I. This fundamental quality is shared between the observer, who is observing an object or a place, and the object and place itself. So Christopher frequently refers to quantum mechanics, where the observer and the observed intertwine in a wave function, Okay, I have studied quantum mechanics, so that makes sense to me. But most people have not, so that's it's not a very useful explanation. And anyway, if you've read popular accounts of quantum mechanics, it acts on the very microscopic scale. But here we're talking about one person and a window. This is macroscopic. So this is just a possibly useful analogy and doesn't go any further than that. Now, to go further, a sense of connectedness to one's surroundings has fundamental consequences of how one feels their own reality. And Christopher throws this remarkable assertion out for consideration, namely that the feeling of being alive in your own self, which has to do just with your own, inside your own body, your own brain, that feeling really comes from a sense of connecting to the surroundings, from connecting to the universe. Therefore, Christopher poses that this is an essential quality. The ability to connect really is at the basis of how we feel alive as a person in ourselves. Namely, we are not isolated. Our sense of life depends upon connecting to the surroundings. And in order to drive the point further, we have the corollary, which is the opposite. If you are in an environment that prohibits a deep connection, you cannot connect because of the geometrical properties of that particular environment, then you cannot feel yourself to be real. You cannot feel the intensity of your own humanity in such an environment, which we can call to be sterile. And therefore, the shape of the environment controls the wholeness of our whole person. Uh, this is a huge statement by Christopher, and he struggles to convince the reader that this is true. I think most of people who are attending today's talk uh, either take it as proven because of their own experience, or at least consider that it could be true because they feel part of what Christopher is describing. Uh, those who have not read The Nature of Order, to those, this may seem strange, but anyway, that's available for examination, and of course there are tests that one can do personally, and we'll get to those later. So the danger of being surrounded by non-living artificial structure, as defined by the absence of the 15 properties and the absence of deep symmetry in the field of centers, is that it numbs the organism. And after many years, people become used to being numbed and disconnected. Now, this strikes home because we know that children, up until the point where they're beaten into submission, children naturally connect. They take crayons and they draw on the walls. They draw beautiful things. But society has a way of beating them into submission. And so by the time they go to school, all that is beaten out of them, all the sense of connectivity. So, of course, adults in many parts of today's society are numbed and therefore disconnected. Now, what the consequences of this are really frightening, because if we're so numbed, then we go to experience nature. We go to walk in the park, or we take a vacation. We pay a lot of money to take a vacation, to go to some exotic beach to enjoy nature. But we really cannot because we're so numbed. We have numbed our senses. And I have been to wonderful places, invited to give talks, and I am taking in the wonderful environment, and I see tourists who are staring at their cell phone. Okay, those are numbed. They cannot really enjoy and get the nourishment from the environment. They cannot recharge their batteries that have been discharged by this numbness. Therefore, what do we call the quality that we connect to? Alexander calls this the I. Okay, a strange term. Why did he choose it? Because he wants to show that there is a common quality in all things that have a high degree of life, whether they're animate or inanimate, and we connect to them. So, and when we connect to them, we form a universal connected state. It's like the wave function that overlaps. So the observer and the observed really join into one thing, and he calls that the I. Okay, why use the word the I, or rather than some sort of connective field? Because at the same time, it is deeply personal. You feel it inside you, and it boosts your own sense of the self, of who you are, of how your life is valuable. So so Christopher chose the I because of the personal quality of this connectivity. Therefore, uh, uh, we connect when we connect to inanimate objects and configuration. We are connecting to the I that is present in those objects, and we form then a unity between ourselves and what we connect to. The advantages of a world that consists of living structure is that we can connect to it, of course, and this is after we have connected, the process becomes comforting and healing. We feel at ease because we have an effortless connection. We don't feel the threat from the geometry. Okay, we can feel threat from other things, from other people who are hostile, from wild animals who may attack us, but we don't feel the threat from the geometry of our surroundings if we are careful to choose, or if we're lucky enough to live in surroundings that have living qualities. Our body is nourished, and we feel that we belong to the world, and reciprocally, that the world belongs to us. So this the relationship that we experience with the self-like quality of such a world uh, makes us more alive. Again, the reciprocal connection and the feedback that eventually comes back into us and makes us feel more alive because we're connected to the world, which then leads again, and let me repeat the conclusion, that the state of feeling alive and a whole self in myself, according to Christopher, depends upon the surroundings. The surroundings can feed us to make us feel more alive, or they can diminish us to feel less alive. Therefore, the state of my being, according to this hypothesis, is not independent. It's not locked up inside my mind. I cannot be in a horribly brutal environment and be whole within myself. I cannot insulate myself because the way I feel about myself is directly influenced every time I open my eyes and experience the environment. Therefore, the universal connection to the I refers to a connected state of all things. And if we follow Christopher along this very fancy philosophical excursion, it becomes the whole world becomes a universal I. We know that this cannot occur because large parts of the world do not have the proper qualities. They don't have living structure. So those parts are excluded from the universal I. The intensity of the living structure quality is not enough for us to connect to it. So that world, that part of the world is dead. And unfortunately, we have created most of that portion of the world that is dead. When we connect to the universal I of a connected place, then we feel more alive within ourselves in places that have life in the geometrical sense. So to the I, okay, Brian asked, the I as in I am, not the I as in my eye that looks. So I will conclude now with one of the tests that Christopher uses to prove this um, this theory or this supposition. That is the mirror of the self test that we have discussed so often. So the mirror of the test self works. All of us here today have used it, and it works to not 100%, but it works to an unexpected accuracy. And the description of the connected process of the I between observer and observed explains why the mirror of the self a test works. Otherwise, we have no explanation. Okay, the mirror of the self test works, but it makes no sense. And this is what Christopher himself uh, worked against, because he would get other architects and his students to try the mirror of the self test. And they would say, but this is ridiculous. This is silly. What is the meaning of this? It has no meaning. It cannot possibly work. And Christopher would have to sort of hold them by the hand and tell, please, just do me a favor. I know it makes no sense, but just try it. As soon as somebody would try it, though, they would say, this works. Why does it work? It has no explanation. Well, the explanation is what I have just discussed. By establishing the connection between the observer and the observed, and it's especially good when you're comparing two objects, because you're trying to establish a simultaneous connection with object on the left and the object on the right, and you're just working to establish the connection, and you open yourself by using the mirror of the self test, by asking which one of these two objects or images best represents my own self. Can I actually inhabit that object on the left or on the right? Where do I feel more comfortable? Okay, these silly sounding questions really establish the connection that Christopher is talking about. And then in most cases, you will say, aha, the one on the left, even though I don't particularly like it, but I'm establishing a stronger connection with the one on the left, say. Then we have won. We have won because the person who has experienced that really opens up their mind to say, yes, this is true. I'm able to connect. It's not an illusion. I really feel more connected to that. So that opens up the door to appreciating the rest of the nature of order, because the one of two choices when you do the mirror of the self test has a more intense quality of the I, and therefore connects more with us, and we naturally choose it. So I want to end here and open the floor to discussion.